Good morning to everybody here on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you out east. My name is Katie Burke, and I'm the Senior Government Program Strategist here at Laserfiche. It's my pleasure to be joined today by Michael Reed and Kobe Walker for the webinar, Paperless Permitting and Building Inspections in Brunswick County, North Carolina. Before we begin, there are just a couple housekeeping items that I'd like to cover. First, I've taken the liberty of muting everybody on the line today. So if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. We have allocated some time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. Feel free to send your messages as we go along, and we'll get to them at the end. And finally, today's webinar will be recorded, and we'll send out a link to everyone, so don't worry too much about taking meticulous notes. So we're really excited to present today's webinar because the permitting process is one that's really strategic and important to many government organizations. In a recent Center for Digital Government survey, counties ranked permitting as the second most likely process that they would automate. And this makes sense because the permitting process is critical for three primary reasons. First, because it's revenue generating. Permit fees bring revenue into the organization, and it's logical to prioritize improving a process that brings in more funding rather than one that's a cost center and drains resources. Also, this process is important because it's a public service that impacts the community and one that promotes economic development. When governments are better able to process permits and site inspections efficiently, communities are better able to grow, and contractors, developers, and citizens are better served by their government. Many counties have a strategic vision and goal to increase development, which creates more jobs and a stronger tax base. Automating this process gives IT and the building department a chance to directly contribute to this strategic goal. And the goal of today's webinar is to share how one of the fastest growing counties in the nation streamlined the permitting and site inspection process with the hopes that many of you can implement a similar solution. Michael and Kobe will share a little bit about Brunswick County, North Carolina, and the challenges that brought them to seek an automated solution. Then they'll walk you through the new process that they've developed and how they onboarded major contractors and stakeholders. Finally, they'll share the results they've seen after automation. So thanks, Michael and Kobe. I'm going to hand things off to you here at this time.
All right, thanks, Katie, and thanks for everybody that signed in today. Hopefully we'll have some good information for you guys to take away from this. So, a little bit about Brunswick County. We're sitting on the Atlantic coast, right between Wilmington and Myrtle Beach. It's a very large county, diverse geography, lots of different geography. Some of the best beaches on the East Coast. We're a big tourist zone. Many movies and TVs are shown here since Wilmington is the Hollywood East. So we got a lot of activity around here, a lot of retirees moving here. A lot of people like to move to our area from the north because we're kind of halfway between the north and the south, so they still are close to family, but they get the nice warm weather for the year. We're the 30th fastest growing county in the United States. We are the fastest growing county in North Carolina, and we're the 6th largest in land area in North Carolina with 846 square miles, which prevents a lot of challenges for providing services to our citizens. Why? And then why did we automate? Well, with such a large area, a lot of our developers and builders, it may take them 30 minutes just to drive to the county office. All our county offices are centrally located, but most of our activity is at the north and the south ends of the county. So it's, everybody has to drive a lot. We have a lot of activity. We do about 3,000 building inspections a month, and we have over 150 applications for new construction. That's just new construction. We do a little bit more of that for just sub-permits, change-outs, ACs, heat pumps, etc. With all this activity, we had really long lines, and it wasn't uncommon for somebody to sit in a lobby for an hour just to get to the permitting clerk. sometimes even longer if we had some people that really didn't understand the permitting process. So somebody that could have been in 10 minutes might sit for an hour because a clerk is busy working through all the steps with somebody. And then if they got here and they were missing a document like a lien agent sign off or something like that, they would have to leave and drive back again. So again, another wasted trip, a lot of gas, time, money, not so. And our citizens were just spending way too much time here in the county offices to accomplish what they needed to do. Some of the challenges we had, projects could take days to get department approvals. Depending on how big your project was, sometimes somebody was assigned that they'd have to walk your application around from department to department to get everybody to sign off. And then quite often you get to one department and they see something that's wrong that another department would have to take action on. So then it would have to go all the way back to the beginning and start over again. Incomplete applications cause long delays. Inefficient time of our staff researching data, flood maps, zoning maps, all this stuff that, you know, should be automated to make it more easier to get the information. Revisions and special conditions, which happen quite a lot, are really hard to track. You know, somebody might call into the health department and request a change. Then we're hoping that health then communicates that change with all the other departments. So that didn't always happen, or somebody would miscommunicate a condition for another department, and we had a lot of confusions. Communication between departments and citizens, there's a lot of confusion there as well. So that led us to our decision. We had to make up our mind if we were going to develop something in-house or if we were going to buy a canned package. Now, we're kind of unique because we've been running our own custom-made solution since 2001. And most of our people, key players, were more interested in doing something in-house because we got a lot of flexibility. The product had been working really well, and we didn't have the limitations of working with somebody else. And we have a really good development staff here. So, but in order to make sure that we were being diligent and making the right decisions, we brought in a few vendors to give demonstrations of their product. That not only proved that we were going down the right road doing it ourselves, but it also gave us some ideas of stuff that we could implement in our solution. So we took notes on that as well. And about the same time all this happened, Kathy, our Laserfiche administrator, and I had been talking with MCCI, our Laserfiche reseller, and they were showing us about forms and workflow and all the new tools that were coming out. So, you know, we were looking at that about the same time, but we were looking at other projects, not the permitting at the time. And it just really made a lot of sense that those tools were what we needed to build our solution on. Because we didn't want to build a completely custom solution. We kind of wanted to utilize tools that we already had and build on top of those, and then only develop custom portions for things that the external tools didn't use. So we wanted kind of the best of both worlds. So I ended up working with the MCCI team, and we took a permit application. We had a fillable PDF that we had online, and myself and the MCCI developers, we took that, we played around with it. We mocked up some very simple forms and some simple workflow to show how the process worked. And then I got all my key players together, permitting people, tax people, health people, inspections people, county management was there. And MCCI did a great demo on what forms and workflow do, but they used our example to present that to us. And by the time we were done that meeting, pretty much everybody in the meeting was shaking their head up and down saying, yeah, this is where we're going to invest our money, this is where we got to go, and this could work for our product. So we decided on using the Laserfiche tools, and then the development team and I, we got together and we decided we were going to use AngularJS to build all the other tools to fill in the gaps, because we wanted a web-based solution that was easy to deploy. So then came the solution from there. We started the design process, and we were very lucky that we had management that was very forward-looking and worked with us, and they actually granted us a new position of a systems analyst, which is something we didn't have. It was something that was being fulfilled by myself, but I was moving into the new role of the deputy IT director, so we had kind of a gap there. So they decided they'd give us a systems analyst, which was probably the most important thing we did to make this project successful. Then this person spent the next 6 months just going around to all the different departments. He would sit right beside the clerks. He learned everything that they were doing. He was there watching how they interacted with customers. He talked to builders when they were coming in, finding out what they wanted. So he kind of learned everything about what a permitting person would do in all the different departments. And then he went through and developed flow charts, process diagrams. We had entire walls in our meeting room just covered in diagrams and flow charts we were doing. And we would bring in all the key department heads and key personnel every 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes even more frequent than that. And we would just discuss the diagrams and the flows, make sure that what he was doing is what they wanted. So, and that really got all buy-in by everybody up front. So now I'm going to go through, there's 4 main components of our inspection process: the application process, the approval process, the building inspection portion, and then our final document delivery. So I'm going to discuss each one of these here. The section in orange is the section I'm discussing at the moment. So the application, and this is where our Laserfiche tools really started coming into play. This is our application that we designed using the Laserfiche forms. And if you notice there, the project number automatically had a number for it. As soon as somebody started up a project, we automatically assign them a number. That way we have something to track all the way through the process. And if something got lost, we could go back through the logs and we could try to find it. And the Laserfiche Forms tool allowed us to create forms very quickly and has a lot of features. Everything you're going to see in the next couple of slides about this application is all built-in tools in forms. The only thing we added was a little bit of CSS styling and some very minor JavaScript, but 99% is built-in tools from Laserfiche Forms. And our application actually has something we did with it is there's only 2 required fields in our application. Put in a name and then either a phone number or an email. And we did that because not everybody's going to be able to complete their application when they're filling it out. And we didn't want somebody to spend an hour, even 10 minutes, going through an application, only getting part way through and then realizing I'm a little bit in over my head, and then lose it all and have to start over. So we just wanted 2 pieces of information, your name and how we can get in contact with you, so that we could actually pick up and help you finish the application later on once it's submitted. So, sorry, skipped a couple slides there. This is the parcel information part of the application. And you'll notice I have a parcel number in the parcel ID field. And this is where we did some integration with our GIS system and some external systems. So as soon as you typed in that parcel ID, it actually went out to our GIS system, pulled back all the addresses that we have that are registered to that parcel so that somebody could just click on a little button and it would copy the address in. Now, if you don't see the address that you're looking at, you can still fill it in yourself. But this allowed us to get more complete, more accurate applications. And it also filled in the property owner information, which again, these are all built-in tools using the lookup tools within Laserfiche Forms. So we didn't have to create anything in this form. We just had to create the store procedure or the table on the back end to allow it to connect to it. So it's very efficient as far as that goes. Then we get into the project description part of our form. And, you know, we have two basic types of permits, a residential and a commercial. If you pick the residential, we tried to be smart with our application. So we would only show questions and areas that are relevant to that type of permit. So if you pick residential, if you look at the bottom of that form there, it says permit request residential, that section became visible. No commercial questions are even on this application. So we tried to eliminate the confusion. And again, these are built-in tools in the forms. You know, it's a very simple little wizard. You go in there and say, if this box is this type, show these fields. It couldn't be easier. So that way, we didn't have to worry about people getting really confused and going, oh, is this question relevant to me or not? So we kind of walked them through and built some semi-intelligent forms. Again, in our residential permits, we have just a bunch of check boxes. There's some duplication here. Some of them have the same application on the other permits on the other side. But we tried to get all the common stuff that people would think of. So, you know, if they home renovation and home addition, it's basically the same permits behind the scenes, but one person might think it's an addition and one just thinks it's a remodel. So we tried to make our applications not as confusing and accommodate as many people as possible. And then another great tool in the Laserfiche forms is it has a document upload component to it. So all we had to do was drag the control onto the form, and boom, we could have people uploading all their documents at the same time they submit our application. And there's a repeating control within the forms that allows you to add multiple elements of the same type. So that allowed us, for our document types, that we could actually let them select the type of document they want, upload any documents relevant to that, but then hit the add button and add a different type. So in the background behind this form, when you hit the submit, we actually go through and relabel all the documents are uploaded. So anything that was added in the CAMA permit section there, we would rename whatever the file was named was that the user submitted, we would name a CAMA permit, which allows our permitting clerks and everybody looking in our system to be able to go and identify a document they're looking for much easier and not having to scroll through all of them, because some of these applications could have 20 or 30 documents associated with them. So if you're looking for the CAMA permit and we left them as generic names, they'd could have to open up 30 documents just to see it. So this was a great feature, just that repeating control, the file upload, gave us a lot of capability to get some standardized naming and organizational for our users inside. That was the application process. Now, one thing about the application is once the user submits their form, we use the process modeler behind the forms to actually route it through what we call an intake process. And we have a set number of people that what they do is they review each submission. If it's not complete, they call the person up on the phone, talk to the person on the phone, and make sure that that's exactly what they're doing. They try to fill in the rest of the form, validate that we've got all the minimum required fields that we need to be filled out for other people to make a decision. And then once they do it, then they will hit submit, and that puts it into the system for our departments to start reviewing. And that's the section I'm going to go through right now, is our approval process. This part of the program is where we did our custom code. And what you're seeing here is our dashboard. And this is what our users live by. They keep this open on their screen at all times. It automatically refreshes it every 5-10 minutes, I believe it is. And this tells the departments there's an application in there, who's taking action on it, what action they've taken, whether or not I need to take action, or if it's not even relevant to me, like engineering, for example. They only deal with commercial projects. So if a residential project is submitted, we just automatically said engineering is not required. So they can just take a look at here, and they just go up the list, and they know exactly what they got to work on today, or if something's been sitting there for a little while, they know what to work on. And one thing to note about these screens, these next couple of screens, the exact same screen that our internal users use, we have published on our website for the public and the builders to use, with a few little minor variations of stuff that's not public information. And we did that so that when phone calls come in and somebody's like, well, I can't figure out where this is, they're looking at the exact same screen. So it's very easy for our internal people to communicate to the outside, click this button, follow this link, get to where you need to go. So now, if I'm a planning person and I see that the first project there on the list is something I need to address with, I just click on the project number. And that will take me to open up the application. Again, it takes you to your approval screen where everybody can sit and take a look at what they got to do, who's made notes, who's put conditions on there, so that I can sign off on this project. So everybody works through this process. In order to see our documents, what we did was we actually embedded inside our application, depending on the type of user. If you are a public-facing user, we embedded the public portal web link product inside an iframe right in our application. So nobody has to go to the Laserfiche application externally, look up the project, drill down to it. We took them right to the project. So all the documents that are viewable by that person are right there. They can click on it, view them, print them out, do whatever they need to do. Now, if you're an authorized user, then you would have seen the web access control embedded in here, which would have gave them more tools to add files, delete files, add annotations, all the stuff you could do outside the system. We just embedded it right into it. And we did this because we don't send any documents out to anybody. No, if you've got an invoice ready to be done, we'll send you a link saying the invoice is ready and a link to the public portal so that people can come and download them themselves. So we don't have to worry about attachments and spam blockers and all that stuff as much. So, and people can self-service themselves. And that leads us into the building inspections part. And this is the meat and potatoes of the whole application. This is where everything really happens. Again, our custom application, same thing the public sees, the internal people see. This is our summary of our permits, and this is where you can prepare a permit, add a permit, and this is a section that, in hindsight, we wish we would have done it a little bit differently, and I'll get to that when I talk about what we're coming up next and our goals for the future for this product. But, you know, it's very simple. We pull a lot of this stuff out. We could have done a lot of this with templates and fields. You know, we learned that lesson. Payments, everything that's got to do with invoices. Invoices were all done through Laserfiche forms. Credit card processing came through a couple official payments, a couple other sources. And then inspections. And this is a very important one because we have a lot of inspections and we have a high turnover in inspections. And we leverage a lot of tools, Laserfiche and ArcGIS at this point. So this here is the form that's on our public-facing website. So if a contractor is ready to schedule his inspection, then he would go to the website, load up this form, or if he called in on the phone and talked to an internal person, we sent him to the same form. So there's only one way to schedule an inspection. Either way, if it's internal or external, it went through the Laserfiche forms. You load it up, you type in your project number, and then we had a real problem at the beginning when we started launching this of people calling up and scheduling the same inspection multiple times. So what we did was we went back and we added this currently scheduled inspection section, which is using the lookup tools built in the forms, and we went out and just pulled back any inspections that are outstanding that have not been passed or failed just to stop the duplication from coming through. Then you pick your permit that you want, and it's a drop-down box of all the different permits on your project. Then you select which inspection you want to do. And again, it's a drop-down, so there's only certain elements you can do. And then you can add notes, like call the inspector 30 minutes before I'm getting to them, because I got to come unlock the door. They go through, they would hit submit on this. Again, this went to an intake process, where one of our clerks, using the process modeler behind the forms, they would actually take a look at it and validate that it wasn't a duplicated inspection. They are actually ready to do that inspection to the best of their ability. You never know completely. And if they didn't see anything wrong, then they would hit submit, and then that would send it back to the next stage where we actually wrote the data out to our ArcGIS system. And that's where I'm going to get to now. Our building inspectors, they go out in the field with iPads and Arc Collector for ERSI's product. And you can see this is a map of the county. There's kinds of little houses dotted all over the place. The different colors are the different inspectors. So they can tell, they know their areas. They can take a look at this map, and they can pretty much plan out their day starting up. All the details are over on the side where they can, who the applicant was, who the contractor was. It's got telephone number in there, and it has all the different inspections they're going to do for that day. Then they just have to click on the little house. They can bring it up. They can set pass, fail, and then it all gets wrote right back to our system. Now, there's a couple of things here with this Art Collector app that was very nice, and that is it had turn-by-turn directions into it. So if somebody was with new inspectors that we have that might be from out of the area, only lived in Brunswick County a month or even less than that, it's very hard to find your way around this county sometimes. It's very rural, and a lot of new construction going on. They can click on a button. We had built our own address locators so that we were using our address information and not like Google's. That way, if a street was just built last week, it would actually show up on the map. So, and I rode around in the field with a couple of inspectors after we implemented this, just so I could go out and watch how they're doing to see how they're doing it. And I saw this feature utilized a lot. So, and they really liked it. So that's a nice little feature in the Art Collector app. Again, I'm going to go back to the map here on iPad. And if you notice here, right here, there's a link there. It's a little hard to see. But that link, if they clicked on it, took them right to the Laserfiche mobile application. Took them right to their project. They have access to every single document that's ever been uploaded to this project. I mean, and they could be in the field and somebody in the office could add the document in the office. They've got instant access to it. So this was great because now if a building inspector was out in the field and he's looking at a project and he had a question, he can come in here, go find the site plan, bring up the site plan, take a look at it. He can go back and read the application. He can even bring up the inspection request and see if there was any additional notes that didn't get populated in his thing, on his dashboard there. So it really helps with them having full access to everything, and then they don't have to call back into CP to the office, get somebody to go pull up out of a filing cabinet. It's just a lot of wasted time, and it's more efficient this way. So the Laserfiche mobile app was something we added not too long ago, which has really paid off some big dividends. So, and again, here's another version of the map. This one here is our public-facing map. It's a lot more limited than the other one. It just shows all the houses around the county, and up in the top left-hand corner, you can't see it in this diagram. All they got to do is type in their parcel number and their address, and it zooms right to their house. so it's very easy to locate. But if somebody wants to check the state of their inspections, they click on the house. It brings up all their details. They can see territory. That's who the inspector is that either went to the house or is the person that's responsible for it. The status results will either show tomorrow, which means it's on tomorrow's list, current, which means it's on today's work schedule, they just haven't got there, or pass or fail if it's already been done. So it's a very easy way for our contractors to maintain what they do. They can get to this on an iPad, an iPhone, through the web. So it's our way of communicating to our builders the best that we possibly can. And that's the building inspections. That process just repeats over and over depending on how many permits you got, how complex the project is. It could last a week, it could last months. It just really depends. So, and that takes us to the last stage in here, the final document delivery. And in our process, we have, if it's a commercial project, then all the departments have to sign off on it, that it's complete. If it's a residential or a change out or something minor, all of this is set to not required. It's not, you don't have to go through this. But on large commercial projects, we needed to make sure that everybody was actually going back and double check it, making sure all the T's were crossed and whatever. Now, if you said that you didn't care about the project not required at the beginning of the process, we automatically carried that forward. So departments didn't have to work on something that really was irrelevant to them. Only the departments that took action at the beginning. This actually has been a big saver for us as well because it has kept us from letting things slip through the cracks. You know, if somebody put a condition up front, it's not, that department that put the condition on here has to come in here and manually say, all those conditions have been taken care of, I'm going to let it go through. So it's a nice double check. We only did it on commercial because we tried to do it on residential, and it just put too much of a delay into the system. And residential projects are usually pretty straightforward. So we made a call and backed that out. So once everybody has signed off here, then you're ready to get your CO, your certificate of occupancy. Again, we use Laserfiche forms for this. So you could come in here, when you clicked on the button, we would actually pass the link in with a couple query parameters of the project number, using the lookup facilities within forms. We'd go out and bring back and populate this whole form. Whoever's in charge of the CO just has to complete it, sign it, print it out, and you're done. The CO is done. A notification would go out to the builder saying his CO is ready with a link to the public portal, so he could go into the public portal and print out a copy if he wanted to. So, and in all that little process there at the CO, closing projects, we do a bunch of little things behind the scenes. We go into, we use workflow for a lot of this. We actually go into changing addresses in the GIS system from permanent to temporary, or temporary to permanent if it was supposed to be. We would notify the electric company that the CO has been issued so they could turn it on. So we had file watchers in workflow so that when certain documents got uploaded, it actually goes through and does all these background processes, so nobody has to worry about it anymore. And workflow worked great for that. And, you know, less code that we had to write, something that's more maintainable. So that was the whole process of a permit. Now I'm going to get into change management and training and how we handled that part of it. All of this started, we got a new chief building inspector and we got a new planning director about the same time. And they both came in with a completely different vision of how permitting and planning should be done. So they changed fee structures, they changed rules, processes, everything else. So we were just sitting there hacking up our old system trying to make it to work while we developed this whole process. And we sat down with them and we kind of realized that about 80% of our applications came from a very few large builders. And these are people that know permitting inside and out. They know it better than we do probably sometimes. So, and then the other 20% are people that are going to do one permit here. They only do one a lifetime. So we took the approach that we were going to create a product that would serve the 80% to the best that we could, because the other 20% is always going to need people to hold their hand, walk them through the process. So too much automation actually is a hindrance to those people. So a lot of the stuff we did seems a little bit more advanced than the average Joe could do, but that was our audience. And the big goal of that was if we could get them through the process with this little interaction with us, that freed up our personnel to actually sit and spend more time with the average citizen, so they weren't as stressed out, they weren't as rushed to get things down, so they could really help those people out a lot more. Training, we held meetings, like I said, every 3-4 weeks. We would bring everybody in for the whole process. We would talk about it, backtrack, go forward, change. Once we got our first mock-up of the system, which was very basic, but it showed the whole process, we actually brought our builders into the complex and held a couple of meetings, and we demoed to them, let them talk to us, give us feedback to it. And, you know, in between those meetings, we actually implemented some of their features, which really bought us a lot of goodwill with our builders, because they saw us listening, they saw us doing what they wanted, so they were a lot more willing to work with us. So, and then once our system went live, the first couple of days, I was on the phone with the chief building inspector, and we called all our largest builders. And we talked to them on the phone, made sure they understood what was going on. I even offered to go to their staff meetings or send one of my staff to their staff meetings so that we could make sure that they understood exactly how to do it. So this would be a win-win for everything. And we actually called one of our largest builders. I want to think he was probably the second one we called that day. And when we called him up, he'd already done 5 applications. So that kind of proved that we had created our application so how they wanted to work, and they understood it pretty good. Then we created a YouTube video, and the link is right on the application that just walks you through what to do, explains why some fields are there sometimes and not, just so there's no confusion. We intend on doing a lot more of that too. So, the results we found. We launched this about the middle of October of last year, and as of the beginning of this month, we've done 900 permit applications, about 1,200 change-out applications, and 10,000 inspection requests have gone through the system. Just the inspections portion, we haven't even sat down and tried to figure out savings on a lot of the other stuff. We've saved $4,000 in paper by just having the schedule inspection form online and using the iPads and the Laserfiche mobile app. Well, see, we don't have to print out any documents anymore for the inspectors to go out in the field. They go with an iPad, that's it. They used to go out with an iPad and a stack of paper. So there's about $4,000 just since October we've saved there. Our inspectors do everything from their iPads now. It's the only piece of device they go out with. They didn't like them at first, but now you can't get it away from them. So they got it used to them very quickly. Another big thing is contractors. We saved them a lot of time and money of travel, gas, time, but we've also allowed them now so that they can spend the daylight hours out there managing their projects, dealing with their people. Then they can come back in the office that evening, call an inspection, fill out an application, do whatever they need to do. So now they've basically got 24/7 accessibility for requests for everything now. Things we've learned. We were very new to forms and workflow. Most of my development staff had never even worked with any of these tools when we first started. And so we used them where we could have. We thought they wouldn't work for some scenarios, so we developed code. And we turned out if we would have spent a little bit more time learning about templates and fields, we could have cut out a whole bunch of custom code. And it would have been much quicker, more efficient too. Things that we did was we didn't try to solve everyone's problem, not the first time through. We concentrated on streamlining the process where we could, get it into people's hands, let them work with it, and then we just keep adding features as we go. We've been adding probably new features every 2 or 3 weeks to it since. It works out a lot better. People didn't have to learn as much up front, so they gradually get to do it, and it's getting more efficient every week. I wish at the time we would have had the server space, that we could have built out a proper development environment. It's something we have just done in the last few weeks. So now we have a development form server, a development workflow server, a production form server, and a production workflow server. The best that we could do is we were going through and putting dev or staging inside of our naming conventions, but then you always had to go back and rename it when you moved it to the next stage. Occasionally we were under tight deadlines and somebody would forget to remove staging out of the name, so now we've got production stuff, name staging. It just caused a lot of confusion. It would have been nicer if we would have had just 2 straight environments. So we got everyone on board at the beginning. I mean, I even brought the tax office in on this because they were a consumer of this product. So we brought everybody we could think of that had any interest in how we were doing permitting so that they could tell us up front what they needed. We ended up actually creating custom forms that would be outputted to the tax department, and we passed those along through Laserfiche. So now they have their own little custom screen with all the information, a summary of all the information they want. So, and build in stages, you know, go back, refactor your solution after deployment. Users, to me, I've always learned, if you can make them productive quicker, they're happy, and then you can go back and fix the little problems that were nagging you instead of making them wait even longer for the solution. What's next for us? For the permitting project, what we got next is we want to leverage forms and workflow to allow our contractors to request their sub-permits too. Right now, you can only get your initial building application. When you're ready for your electrical or your plumbing, then you need to call in and say, okay, I'm ready for this. On the contract, the contractor's going to be on it. We're going to go back now and add all that using forms. It's going to be on the web so that they can come in, put in their contractors. It'll go through intake just like the original application. So that, again, will cut down phone calls coming into the office and free up more time for our permitting clerks to critique applications. We're planning on adding text messaging for selected events. So when an inspection passes or fails, we're going to be sending out text messages. We're looking at a mobile app where we can actually do push notifications and let somebody have like a little, their own version of the permitting software just for their contractor license. We want to do a lot more integration with our GIS system. Ultimately, what we like to see is when you fill out your application and you type in a parcel number or an address, about 80% of that application should be filled out. Flood zone, subdivision, jurisdiction, all of that stuff. We all got it in our GIS system. We just need to move it in there. Then we just got to ask the person questions about what type of building he's building, what's your project, which will make the application process even quicker for our users. The department approval, we custom made all that. We should have done it all with the process modeler. It would have been cleaner, more efficient, and it would have been so much easier to adapt. We had a scenario where utilities, they can't take action until engineering took action before them. Well, we had to go back and rewrite all our code to give that link. We would have been doing it in the process modeler. We would have just had to drag a few controls around, add a couple of little lines, it would have been done. So we could have leveraged forms a lot more than we did. And this one has been so successful now that the environmental health wants to come into the project. So I've got my systems analyst doing the same thing. He spent all his life in environmental health. He's going out in the field with the workers. He's learning everything there is to know that environmental health does. So probably 3 or 4 months, we're going to start on that project. What's next for the Laserfiche tools? Well, because we've been so successful here, everybody wants to get on board with Laserfiche in our county now. We just got done a code violations application that leverages the SDK pretty heavily, and we've got a stormwater app that's next up to be worked on. Our tax department wants to use forms of workflow for all their listing forms, personal property, rental, etc. We're looking at using Connector to integrate with our finance department. We're working with trying to create our employee action form process, which, has grown into something pretty big as far as we're concerned, and we're pretty excited. We actually put out on our listserv here for North Carolina for other counties, municipalities, about who else was using Laserfiche and action forms and stuff like that. And we had 25 counties that responded. This evening, actually, 21 people from around the state are going to meet, and we're all going to talk about creating a user group, how we can actually leverage each other's skill sets to create projects. So, we might have one group working on the action form and another group working on a contract process, and then we'll just share them all amongst ourselves. So I'm kind of excited. That could turn into something pretty big. And that is it for what I've got. So I guess we'll open it up to Q&A now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate that. And I know that we've had quite a few questions come through, so we're going to get to as many as we can here now. If we don't get a chance to answer your question, feel free to shoot me an email or my colleague Ryan Park, and we'll be happy to pass that along to Mike and Kobe if we can't answer it ourselves. So first up, we've received a couple of questions about the payment processing portion of the permitting process. And some people are wondering if there's an integration with your ERP system or how exactly you guys are handling the payment piece of the process.
We don't have a direct integration with the ERP system. We've kept it very simple. It's something we're looking to in the future, but really our CP they get a file from either official payments, a check processing service, or checks in the mail, and then we just bundle them up and create a report at the end of the day, and they take the money over to the finance department and drop it off. So there's no real integration at this point in time, but I do see a way to leverage forms and workflow that we could create a whole process in there. So.
Great, thanks. We've also had a couple questions come in asking about signatures on forms. I'm not sure if you guys need to have any signatures attached to your forms, but if so, how are you managing that process?
We haven't implemented any signatures yet. That's part of our environmental health process. We will be doing it. There's no signatures required on the building permit side or any of that stuff. Request for utilities and environmental health has signatures, and we've been talking with our legal department a lot about it, and if it is just a straight authorization signature, then we're just going to use the Laserfiche signature tools that are built into forms. For contract management, stuff like that, that's getting a little bit more on the legal side, they want us to use an external source like Signex, or I can't even think what the other one's called. So, but I mean, Laserfiche Forms comes with a great signature control built into it that you drop it on, and it takes care of most of it for you. So.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. We do have integrations with Signex, as Mike just mentioned, as well as DocuSign, and so those are two leading digital signature platforms that you can use with Laserfiche. All right, we had a question from Tim here asking, do you ever do inspections to a property that doesn't have an address yet?
No, because our policy down here is as soon as you request a project to be done, an address is assigned at that point in time. So if an application was to come in and there's no application, no address assigned to it, the intake people would then work with the GIS department to have an address assigned to that. They would add it to the application and communicate that back to the applicant. So an address is required for a project to be started in our county.
Okay. Great. We've also had a couple questions come in about the analysts that you hired for this project and as a whole. One question is around what happened to the analysts after the project. Did they stay on the team? Did they join an app dev team? You know, the project took 6 months. What happened with the analyst after that?
Our analyst, actually, we moved him on to the next project. So when the permitting was done, when his part of that was done, and we were in the development, we kept him involved in all the all the little meetings and made sure he was aware of everything. But then we put him on the code violation project so that he spec'd that out while we were finishing up on permitting. Then when we moved to code violations, he moved on to stormwater. Now he's in environmental health. So he's always one project ahead of us. But we always bring him in for everything we discuss on any previous projects as well, just in case we have to send him back in to do some further deep analysis, and then he's aware of what's going on. But if it's just a small little tweak or a program feature or something like that, we kind of let our developers work with our group. We only have 2 developers, 1 database administrator, myself, a Laserfiche administrator, and the system analyst. So we only got really a 5-person team, so we kind of utilize our people the best we can.
Great. Great. We've also had a couple questions come in around the GIS integration and the mapping functionality that you showed a little bit earlier. One question is, what GIS application are you using? And the other question related to that is, are you using GPS to map out those locations?
I'm going to let Kobe talk about that because that's his area of expertise.
Can you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, so there are 2 questions here, somewhat related. One is, what GIS application are you using? And are you using GPS to track the inspector's location?
So the name of the application that we're using is ArcGIS Collector, and that's a product by Esri. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to have what's called a feature class, which allows points on the map. So upon completion of the inspection is plotted on the map, and they can use that out in the field on their iPads. And if you have an iPad, it's going to use tower triangulation to get the coordinates of where they are for the routing as well as what inspections they're looking at. And if they're on an Android device, it can actually use actual GPS to determine their location. So that's the 2 pieces, or the 2 answers to those questions.
Thanks very much, Kobe.
I have something I'd like to add to that, though.
Sure.
Just for reference, like when a project is created, we actually go out to the GIS and figure out the XY coordinate of that parcel, and we save that along with our permitting data. So that way, 10 years from now, if that parcel split 5 or 6 times, we can still plot the dot on the map where that permit was. So.
Very good point. Very good point. Switching gears here, a couple questions about the dashboard that you showed. One person just wanted to confirm that you used AngularJS for that customized dashboard, and there were some questions too. I know you talked at the end about how you could have saved yourself some custom coding by using Laserfiche forms for approvals. If you want to just touch on that briefly as well.
Yeah, the dashboard was created with the AngularJS, and we copied a lot of data into some custom SQL tables for storing that. In retrospect, I would have rather have done that with Process Modeler, and because if we would have put proper templates behind our applications, and if we would have created folders so that, you know, in our Laserfiche we could add a planning folder, an engineering folder. We could have just put shortcuts to applications if a certain template field was set on. Then we could use the SDK to actually pull all that data back. So, you know, instead of storing the data 2 and 3 different ways, we could have leveraged templates, fields, and the SDK to build that dashboard. And we could have mapped out a better process flow. So, you know, engineering would have came right after utilities in the process modeler, whereas we had to write the rules to say, okay, disable everything in engineering until utilities has done it. Engineering would never have seen it if we would use the process modeler.
Great. A couple questions too about plan review and how do you mark up the submitted plans?
Our building inspections, they, what's that product? Bluebeam. They really like Bluebeam. So we set up, they're the only users, plan review, that actually uses the Laserfiche client because our application, yes, we had it embedded inside of it, but it was a little bit cumbersome for them to use because they actually had to open up the document, mark them all up using Bluebeam, which Bluebeam is a very good product. So they could put a stamp on a page, and it would actually put that stamp on every page, which is something I don't believe the Laserfiche product will do without custom code. So they would actually go in, open up the PDF, the site plans, mark them up using the tools in Bluebeam, push them back in, and then what we did was we have two folders for site plans. We had an internal folder and an external folder because you cannot allow somebody to download a site plan if it's got the engineering seal on it or something like that. So our plan reviewers would actually have to go and put their stamp over top of theirs completely and burn it in. So that's why we had the two. We had the original that came in, and then the one that had our seal burned on top of the engineering seal. So, but, you know, we configured Laserfiche to automatically open up the PDF using whatever software is on the desktop, which was configured to Bluebeam. So it automatically opened up to Bluebeam, and then they just saved it right back into the repository.
Great. Some questions about the project itself. Do you have an idea of how long it took, and do you have any estimate on how much it cost to build this all out?
Well, originally we had estimated it would take 12 months from start to finish. And that was 6 months of analysis, six months of coding, testing, and we'd be ready to deploy. It actually took us more like 16 months to get published out. We were a little bit behind schedule. I don't really have a cost other than, you know, we already were staffed. We already had all our developers on staff. I mean, our guys were going to work on something, so I don't really have a cost of what it cost to develop it out outside of licensing and our staff costs. So I would say it was considerably cheaper than buying a canned package.
Great. And to clarify, there are a couple of questions too. You know, this process was built by the staff at Brunswick County. They did not, you know, outsource the project to Laserfiche for this. You know, they built this themselves.
It was all built by our internal people.
Exactly.
And honestly, and I just going to, Laserfiche Forms, it is a very easy product. You don't need a developer to do it. We've actually started with some of our other things like the tax listing forms, for example, that I mentioned that's coming up for us. We're actually training some of our users and departments that they can create their own forms, and then they pass the form back to us, and then we go back and do any of the little advanced. If we got to do some CSS or JavaScript behind it, but we're actually offloading the actual designing of the forms to our end users just so that we can work on more projects at one time.
Great, great. I know we're running short on time here, so I know we didn't get to all of the questions today. Again, if we didn't get to your question, please feel free to send me an email, and I'll be sure to follow up with you, and I can put you in touch with Mike if you guys need to speak with him about the question. So I guess we'll close with one question from Chris that I really love, just came in. It says, what is your contract hourly rate to do this for another municipality?
Well, you know, like I said, we are actually having a meeting tonight with 21 people from the state where we want to work as a state working on these projects and not just a county building it ourselves. So kind of like an open source project is what we're trying to figure out how we can do that. So everything that we've got, our entire permitting software, our county commissioners have said free to anybody that wants it. We won't support it, and we won't help you develop any custom components to it. I mean, we do a little bit of informal, you know, walk you through so you can understand it, but like I said, we only got 5 people, so we got to be real careful on that. But it is all free to anybody that wants it.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and follow up with a couple of you. I know you have some urgent questions here. Make sure I get back to you. If you don't hear from me, you know, go ahead and send me that email. But thank you all so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your attention, your time, and your thoughtful questions. Look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Have a good one.